So I'll just begin by saying happy 2024. This is our first meeting of the year. I also hope everyone had an opportunity to enjoy the MLK weekend holiday and the opportunity for maybe a day of service or some time with family. Also important to note that as we enter the month, we are looking at the Lunar New Year, another opportunity for celebration. So in that celebratory mood, let me welcome all of the members of the EAG and allow for our opening. As you know, we typically begin with both a safety moment and an equity moment. I know we've had some conversations about the role of the safety moment, and we have a member of the EAG who's going to offer that for us tonight. I think it's Jenny Harding. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Jenny, for the safety moment. And then we're going to move to our own Lisa McCall, who's going to provide us with the equity moment. So let's get started. Welcome, Jenny, if you're on.
Hello, how's everyone doing? Good to see everybody.
Good.
So tonight my safety moment is on emergency preparedness. I'm sure there was like a lot of other safety moments I thought about over this long weekend of freezing pipes and freezing everything. But in general, overall, January is a great time to kind of update your emergency plans. There's kind of three major steps. Number one is to make a plan if you don't have one. If you have family, kids, this is kind of for your household, targeted towards your household. So make sure that you have a plan with your family, that your family knows evacuation routes. Make sure you've designated maybe like a meeting point or few in case not everyone is at home together or can make it back home. I know when my kids were younger, we had passwords in case of certain emergencies that we could text each other. And we also had some specific spots, meeting spots in different areas, depending on where they would be, during any given day. Make sure that you have emergency contact information updated. That should include family members. And again, your phones might not work. So it's always good to have this resource in maybe a few different, in a few different ways. So it's easy to find. And next step is build a kit, or actually a few. So my son is actually building our emergency kit now. He's been buying a lot of supplies. He's kind of my little prepper lately. But a good home kit should supply you with some, non-perishable food, water, medical supplies, your medications if you have them, important documents, clothing, things like that. It should give you about 2 weeks worth to supply everybody with food and water, and your basic needs. Also a go bag. So if you are at home, but you have to leave your house right away, just kind of the same thing, water, food, non-perishable food, clothes, important documents, and then a vehicle kit. So if you're not at home, but you're trying to get back home, same thing, food, water. I always carry like an extra pair of shoes and socks in my car, along with a blanket. In addition, that's just part of my kit, just in case. And then the third step would be to make sure that you are registered to receive emergency alerts. I know sometimes I even myself try to unplug so much that I might then reconnect and realize, oh my gosh, something major just happened, you know? So it is good to kind of be registered for kind of major alerts. And I put a couple here. I can share the links to these as well, because there's a lot of information in on how to register with each of these groups, so you can make sure that you're getting the most up-to-date information. And stay safe. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jenny. As sometimes we take these things for granted, but having the details, very helpful reminder. Lisa, can I turn to you for the equity moment?
Absolutely. Hello, EAG. So great to see so many of your faces after a much needed break over the holidays. So for the past few meetings, you may have noticed that we have been presenting not only a safety moment, but an equity moment as well to start each EAG meeting. So the purpose of the equity moments are to refocus our attention on equity, utilizing the 3 A's, which are accessibility, accountability, and affordability, and on the core tenets of justice shown on the slide, which are recognition, procedural, restorative, and distributive, to be intentional on how we offer feedback to our presenters that come to the EAG meetings. So conversations at our equity forums really sparked this idea, and in coordination with the steering committee, we are prepping to hand this off to each of you, and the PSE staff will take on safety moments so that you all can just focus simply on equity. So starting with our February meeting, we will be reaching out to EAG members, beginning with the steering committee members first, to ask you to prepare or team with me to prepare an equity moment. So again, we'll work on this together, giving it time to evolve and grow. For tonight's discussion, we'll mostly be focusing on our work in the procedural quadrant, which is shown in orange on the current slide. I've also went ahead and included a relevant excerpt from our guiding principles for your reference as we deeper discuss distributed energy resources and ask for your ideas around program implementation. I absolutely look forward to collaborating with each of you on these equity moments. Does anyone have any questions about the equity moments or what's to come?
Please do feel free to use your raise hand function or come off mute. See any hands up? That was excellent, Lisa. And I think we'll all look forward to embedding the equity moment in our discussions, and look forward to working with you on that. So thank you very much.
Absolutely. Thanks, Rose.
Thank you. For those who may be joining the live stream, know that as we move through the program, we'll be providing you with some details around how you can participate. And I will update you on that opportunity as we move forward. But now it really gives me a great pleasure to introduce Mary Kipp. Mary is the President and Chief Executive Officer of Puget Sound and has been since January 2020, I believe. Mary's, her prior to joining Puget was the Senior Vice President and General Counsel for El Paso Electric Company. She's a graduate of Williams College and the University of Texas at Austin, and that's where she secured her law degree. But I think what's most important is that she's a highly respected leader in the utility space and a strong advocate for the clean energy transition. She's extremely busy, and so we really are delighted to welcome you, Mary. Thank you for taking the time to join the EAG, and I'll turn it over to you.
Rose, thank you so much, and you're plenty busy yourself. So I think all of us here are got a lot of irons in the fire, and I just wanted to say that I'm so happy to have a few minutes to talk to all of you. And I actually came here. I was thinking about this. I came here, you're right, in January of 2020, and I'd actually been CEO. I'd been general counsel before, but I was CEO of El Paso Electric at the time. But I came here, and the first time I talked to employees was around this date, I want to say, in 2020. And I remember I told everybody there are two things I came here to work on. One is clean energy, and the other one is equity. We've got to have more diversity and more equity. And this group is at the heart of both of those journeys. So So thank you. And it was actually, we then launched in 2021 our Beyond Net Zero goal, which was kind of in line with being our North Star of our customer, being our customers' clean energy partner of choice. I can't talk tonight, but the Equity Advisory Group had its first meeting right before we launched that goal. So the Equity Advisory Group has been powering through for a while. And thank all of you who have stayed on it and kept working hard, because it's a critical role that you're playing. And because of you and because of the hard work of so many of our employees, I would say that today we are closer to our clean energy goals and having those be equitable than we've ever been before. And I want you all to know that we are so committed to listening to you and learning from you. And I say that with a lot of humility. This journey is so complex, and not any individual one of us or group of us knows all the answers. So it's coming together in an environment of listening with the idea of having our minds changed, right? Like that's the point of listening, is to actually hearing what's said, learning from others' experiences, working together, and it informs hopefully how we all think and build equity into our work. So we at PSE have a super important role, and it's a privilege to have that, to play in combating climate change and serving our customers in the clean energy transition. And energy is one of those things, it's an essential need for everyone. So probably more importantly than just about any other business, it's so critical that we don't discriminate or leave anyone behind or leave anyone's voice unheard in the journey. So as we're building our clean energy futures, I said this is super critical. It's so important that we assume not only that everyone is heard, but that everyone can afford the journey and benefit from it. So I know that in this group, you talk a lot about having all voices heard, and that's something I talk about anytime I speak to. Thank you again for being part of this. You partnered with us last year to reach a major milestone in our clean energy Beyond Net Zero carbon journey as we work to prepare and submit our 2023 biennial CEIP update. And it was your dedication, persistence, and your grace as you partnered that helped us accomplish this major milestone as we work collectively to implement the Clean Energy Transformation Act. And I know, like Rose said at the beginning about being busy, everybody has competing obligations for their most precious resource, which is our time. And the time and energy that you've dedicated to help us embed equity in our work is absolutely critical. And I think you've often referred to in this group as the 3 A's: accessibility, affordability, and accountability. Super important. Your straight talk and advice has made it to our officer team and our board. And has had broad reach. And I really appreciate straight talk coming from the Southwest, where people are a little bit more direct than I think they are sometimes here in the Northwest. I very, very much appreciate when people talk to me in a way that resonates. You've opened doors for us to engage with many of your community members in a way that we couldn't have done on our own. So thank you for that. And I've heard so many success stories about equity forums, and I know so many of you have been a part of these. And we see those as a shining example of kind of what equitable engagement in our communities can look like, and we hope to build on that. So we're grateful. Our work together is not done. It's just the tip of the iceberg, and we need your continued support, obviously, to ensure that as we work on the clean electricity transition together, to make sure it's equitable and inclusive, and to make sure that we always keep equity at top of mind. And so keep challenging us with that direct talk to do better. And thank you also for everything that you do on behalf of the many communities of which you all are part. And thank you for supporting PSE in this work. And with that, we'll turn back to Rose and the more important substantive stuff ahead of us.
Well, there's nothing more important than a CEO taking time to be active with the community that represents your interests. So we really appreciate you. Thank you so much for being here.
Truly,
Amy,
truly.
thank you. And you're welcome to stay for as long as you can, but we will certainly understand if you have to dash.
No, I have another call in 15 minutes, but if not, if you guys don't mind, I'll hang out for those 15 minutes and just listen in.
Great. there's some nice comments in the chat. You may want to take a look at them as we move forward. Amy, I know you had your hand up. We just have a minute or so. Did you have a comment for this or something else? Okay. Then we will move along. We'll keep this meeting moving along. May I have the next slide? Thank you. That was magical. We continue to try to make sure that the emphasis is on the EAG, and you have been extraordinary in honoring the requests that I have before you. You are respectful, you behave constructively, you actively participate, and if you don't, I call on you. And you listen and appreciate the diversity of the views and opinions of your colleagues. Observers, as I've indicated to you, this is a meeting for the advisory group, but I want to make sure that you have the opportunity to speak, and we've set aside time on the agenda for that. Again, details to come. May I have the next slide, please? Here's the information as I promised. We are targeting about 7 p.m. for public comment, and this is where any observer may weigh in with any observations or thoughts that they want to share with the EAG. There's no need for you to join the meeting prior to that, and we typically provide you with about 2 minutes to offer those observations. Next slide, please. Here's the agenda for today. We are going to make our way through some updates. We'll have an opportunity to look at the Climate Commitment Act and an engagement opportunity. We'll revisit our distributed energy resources and the selection process, take our break, have an in-depth conversation around our 2023 activities, sort of a year in review, update our next steps, go to our public comment, and then adjourn. May I have the next slide? Here are the objectives for tonight. As I mentioned, there are some, I think, important updates that we will receive from our PSE team, as well as our steering committee. There is an opportunity for you to learn more about what we've been referring to as the CCA, but it's the Climate Commitment Act. And there's an opportunity for the EAG to enhance engagement there. There's an opportunity for us to look at distributed energy resources, the application intake and project selection process. And for this, we'll be taking a look at it from the standpoint of the customer journey. And then we'll take just a lap through memory lane for what has so recently our 2023 EAG topics. Next slide, please. So now we move on to the updates as promised. If there are any questions or comments, remember you can use your raise hand feature or come off mute. And if we've missed you, feel free to alert us that you're interested in advancing either a question or a comment. Also, feel free to use the chat. I think we're all comfortable using the chat to communicate as well. So let me take a moment to introduce or reintroduce Kara, who is going to provide the updates from PSE, and she'll be joined by Troy. Kara, the Director of Clean Energy Strategy, Troy, the Director of Energy Equity. Kara, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Rose. It's so nice to see everyone as we begin 2024. So I just wanted to let you know of some organizational changes that we're making, which we did have a chance to share with the steering committee last week. And this is really a change that we think will benefit the EAG and make sense for PSE as well, particularly as the EAG continues to broaden its lens and involvement in issues that really stretch beyond just clean energy, which is really where this journey started with all of you back in 2021. So over the next couple of months, we will be transitioning the leadership and coordination of the EAG to PSE's Energy Equity team, led by Troy Hudson. Lisa McCall, who you all know and love, she'll be joining Troy's team. She will continue to be your primary point of contact for all things EAG. Yvonne Wang, who is the supervisor of energy equity, will also play a growing role in supporting the EAG's work. You'll be well supported. Brian, Ray, and I will be less involved than we have been in sort of the day-to-day work, but I also want to say we're not going anywhere. So you'll probably see us from time to time as guest speakers as we continue to tackle clean energy issues along with all the other work before you. We see this as a natural step in the EAG's evolution in partnering with us on equity issues. You know, it started with really a narrow focus on equity in this clean energy transition and how do we meet CETA? And it's really over time really grown to be a lot more than that. Because of the questions you've asked, the nudges you've given, or the straight talk, as Mary put it, you know, we now have a greater company-wide focus on equity and a dedicated energy equity team, which we didn't have when this journey started. So we're very excited to see Troy and his team take on this role and move forward. We'll be making this transition over the next couple months. Our goal is this should be fairly seamless for all of you. Our teams have been working closely together for quite some time now, and we'll continue to work to make sure this is a successful handoff. And I just want to take a quick moment to say what a great privilege it's been to collaborate with all of you on this work over the last 3 years. It's just been really meaningful work for me, for Brian, for Ray, for my team to involved in. So it's just been great. So thank you. I will pause here and just see if Troy wants to say anything as well.
Well, thanks, Kara, for the opportunity to say a few words. All of you have met my team and I over the past year, and it was a pleasure to be able to meet a number of you at the forums that you pushed us to organize and set up, and we appreciated that. So that was great. And you'll be hearing a lot more from us as we go through the transition. But for my comments, I just want to focus on Kara and her team, Ray and Brian in particular, and the work that they have done, laying an incredible foundation for us. And it'll be, I think the hard work has been done setting that up, and we now have a fairly high bar to continue to maintain and exceed, hopefully. And I hope you will all join me in sort of letting Kara know in particular how much we appreciate her incredible leadership, her dedication, and her forward thinking as she has approached this topic that was essentially new to PSE at the time. So please join me in thanking Kara.
Thank you.
Back to you, Rose.
Thank you, Troy. If a new year brings anything, it typically brings change. And while all change isn't good, I think you will find that this transition is going to be outstanding. And looking forward to the next steps there. So thank you, Kara, and thank you, Troy. I want to make sure, Lisa, that I give you some time for any updates that you have as well.
Absolutely. Thank you again, Rose. Firstly, EAG, thank you for taking the time to meet with us during the busy holiday season. We had some really good feedback on things like our meeting processes, our communication methods with you all, and as well as follow-up procedures. And we do plan to implement several ideas that you put forth during those meetings. So far, we have completed 11 interviews out of the 16, and we're working to schedule 3 more this month. A summary of the interview meetings will be distributed soon to prep for breakout discussions at the February meeting. If you have not interviewed yet, I will be reaching out shortly. If you do not desire to do an interview, you can also communicate that as well. If Anybody has any questions about any of your check-ins, I'll take those. But just again, thank you for the much needed feedback on how we do our processes with you guys.
Thank you, Lisa. Any questions for Lisa? Comments? Just want to make sure. Okay. Well, we will move on to our next agenda item, which is a presentation on the Climate Commitment Act. And as I mentioned, an update for an opportunity for engagement. So let me welcome Kalina Yukupova, who is the State and Regional Policy Consultant for Regulatory Policy for PSE. Kalima?
Thank you, Rose. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me and Happy New Year. I am here to give a quick update about the Climate Commitment Act and about let you know about an engagement opportunity. I work in the regulatory policy team and have been helping to implement this new law at PSE. So that's why I'm here to speak with you. Next slide, please. So a quick overview before we talk about the engagement opportunity. Next slide, please. So the Climate Commitment Act is a law that the Washington legislature passed in 2021 to reduce greenhouse gas emissions statewide. The program began on the 1st of January, 2023. Next bullet, please. So we wanted to give you some key elements of the Cap and Invest program, which is another name for the Climate Commitment Act law. And for shorthand, we are using CCA. So the Cap and Invest program establishes a greenhouse gas emissions allowance pricing mechanism with an emissions allowance cap, which declines with statewide goals and is aimed to reduce emissions statewide. Next bullet, please. So as the cap declines, the program is intended to incentivize decreases in greenhouse gas emissions. Next bullet, please. The revenues that the state receives from emission allowances, from the sale of emission allowances, are invested in greenhouse gas reduction activities, prioritizing overburdened communities. Next bullet, please. And the equity provisions align with the Healthy Act, and it reduces criteria air pollutants in overburdened communities, and it invests in issues to address environmental justice and health inequities. Next slide, please. So this slide tries to show you at high level how these pieces fit together of the program. So as I stated before, the CCA establishes an emissions cap, and it is set for about 75% of all the emissions in the state. And the cap reduces, and the reduction scale is tied to the state's greenhouse gas emissions limits. The covered entities, such as PSE, for example, natural gas or electric utilities, must either reduce their emissions or obtain compliance instruments. Another word for them is allowances or offsets that we've been using to cover the remaining emissions, or a combination of these. And PSE and other electric and natural gas utilities and other energy-intensive trade-exposed industries are given free allowances. So the cap reduces, and which means the allowances become more scarce and more expensive, more valuable over time, which is expected to send a price signal to incentivize decarbonization throughout the state. So a market is set up, which is a system of trading these allowances and offsets. And there are also currently discussions about potential linking with similar cap and invest programs in California and Quebec. And as I stated before, the next link here is the revenue generated by the allowance auctions will be invested by the state in critical climate projects with specific percentages for overburdened communities. The minimum is 35% with a goal of 40% of benefits and projects must go to overburdened communities and another 10% for tribal areas. So I think we can proceed to the next slide, and I don't have much time, so I'll pause after these slides for any questions. Next slide, please. So since the start of the program in 2023, PSE teams have been working with interested parties and the Commission to implement CCA. And here I'm presenting to you the gas system implementation achievements. So estimated 2023 CCA compliance costs are in customer rates. They've been approved by the UTC to be recovered over the period from October 1st, 2023 through September 31st, 2024. Also estimated 2024 CCA compliance costs are in customer rates, and they were approved to be recovered over the period of calendar year 2024. So a part of this of these rates is that identified low-income customers receive a credit for the full amount of the CCA charge. So there is no impact for identified low-income customers from the CCA charges. And as of today, there are over 70,000 gas customers receiving the CCA low-income credit. And as well as all other eligible customers receive fixed monthly credits because PSE receives the free allowances that I mentioned earlier, and PSE is able to sell them in the auctions, and the revenue that's generated from the sale of the auctions feeds the credits to identified low-income customers and other eligible customers. And so we thought you would be interested to see what do these CCA compliance costs mean in the current bills. So here is an example of a gas residential bill as of January 2024. So if this sample household used 64 therms in January, under the current rates, the bill would be $79.38. You see in the third column the top number. And out of that, $6.92 represents CCA compliance costs, the net impact of both charges and average credits, which represents about a 9.55% increase on the same bill had it without CCA compliance, which is $72.46 for reference. Next slide, please. So as part of our 2024 tariff filing, PSE proposed to allocate $23 million of the 2024 no-cost allowance auction proceeds that we estimated to be used for low-income and named community decarbonization projects in over the period of 3 years, 2024 to 2026. This was really driven in part by the feedback that we received from our interested parties during the engagement that we did with them in 2023. And also, of course, PSE's vision to advance equity and clean energy. So the UTC approved the 23 million over 3 years, but specifically they approved 7.7 million in 2024. And the program design details will be finalized through collaboration with interested parties in the first quarter of 2024. And this is exactly why we are here today. We are here to invite EAG members to join this engagement that will discuss details of how these decarbonization projects would be delivered to low-income customers in named communities over the coming 3 years. For your information, please, if you're interested, please let us know as soon at your earliest convenience, because the first meeting is planned to be set for January 23rd or 24th. There is currently a poll ongoing to set the meeting time, and we will plan 2 more meetings at minimum in February and March. Thank you. Yep, please. I apologize if I'm not doing good on time, but let me know if you have any questions.
I think you're doing okay on time. We just have a couple of minutes. There is a question in the chat. You've indicated the program design is not finalized, but there's a question around how you will identify the low-income families who are eligible for a credit. And I don't know whether or not that's done. Going back to the chat, it is, let's see.
Yep.
It's from Monica.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Monica, for the question. So as part of the implementation program, PSE worked with our IT and billing systems teams to implement a CCA low-income flag, which pulls data from our energy assistance programs. So it's a rolling 24-month flag. So if a customer received energy assistance from PSE at any one point in the past 24 months, they are in this CCA low-income flag, and they will be receiving CCA low-income credits. And the programs that are included are all of PSE's energy assistance programs, just PSE Help, as well as the federal LIHEAP program and the new bill discount rate program.
Are there any other questions? You're getting some positive feedback, Kalima, in the chat. I think EAG members are happy to see this. And I know that you've mentioned the first meetings are coming up. So if there's an interest, the information that you see on this slide will get you to Kalima, and you can pursue your interest in participation. But are there any other questions for Kalima while she's here? We have just a few minutes.
Thank you so much for having me, and please do not hesitate if you have any other questions. What types of projects do you expect? That's a good question. So tentatively to build the draft budget, we assumed full electrification projects for single residential housing. There is some allocation for heat pump, for electrification to heat pumps, for electrification of water heating. There is also an allocation for small business decarbonization, small businesses in named communities, and also multifamily housing in named communities. These are all types of projects allowable by the law to be used from the auction proceeds, and so we will be working with interested parties to help find that balance of how much is spent where and how, and that's where the feedback would be very valuable. We would be very happy to have EAG members join us.
Great. Well, Kalima, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for an informative presentation. And members, this information will be available to you for follow-up. So I'd like to move to the next presentation. I have some introductions to make. We talked about the customer journeys for upcoming solar and battery products, and these are being launched. We have Mackenzie Martin here and Heather Mulligan. Mackenzie is a clean energy project manager with an emphasis on equity for PSE. And Mackenzie, I'd like to invite you to present your presentation. And in so doing, We'll also hear from Heather, but just note, EAG members, that you're going to be given an opportunity to weigh in here. We're going to have some breakout rooms for you, and we'll have some more instructions for you after we hear from Mackenzie. So welcome.
Thank you, Rose, and good to see you all again. I wanted to start by taking you through our past interactions on this topic and further clarify the feedback we're hoping to hear from you today. Next slide. So back in October 2022, we were just starting our DER community engagement planning. We came to the EAG to hear about how we could better tailor our community engagement processes to named communities and their service providers, and then also hear suggestions for which customers you thought we should reach out to. Then, after we conducted all that community engagement in June 2023, we presented on the outcomes that helped inform the design of these products that I'll talk about today that are for our named communities and their service providers. So I'll run you through the high-level program design and customer journey for both Solar Buyback, which is a program for primarily commercial customers, and then the residential batteries program, which is for single-family residential customers. And while certain elements of the program, like the incentive amounts, are already baked into the tariff, we've been working on the more fluid parts of the customer journey, like the marketing, application, and prioritization processes. And this is where we'd really like to hear your feedback on if we could be more equitable. So we'll start with Solar Buyback. I think if we jump 2 slides forward. So to briefly orient you with the benefits and barriers we've heard expressed specific to solar from the DER community engagement I mentioned and other market research we've been following. On the benefits side, we heard a lot about the desire for energy burden reduction, resiliency, and a general increase in the ability to learn more about and participate in clean energy topics. For the barriers, as always, cost of installing solar was at the forefront, along with the worries about a need to upgrade existing infrastructure like a roof. In addition to the time and learning that would be required to find a contractor and manage the installation process. Next slide. So with those customer stated barriers in mind, we developed the Solar Buyback program, which will launch to customers this year. Solar Buyback provides customers with larger systems financial compensation for extra energy above their consumption returned to the grid. And that compensation is at the rate of 6.67 cents per kilowatt hour. But to further reduce the cost barrier, it includes a special pool of additional upfront financial incentives to offset the cost of installing solar for community-based organizations, tribal entities, and government agencies who serve named communities. So think similar to the folks who apply for our Green Power Solar grants. That's food banks, food distribution centers, shelters, tribal community centers, etc. And the extra incentives we're offering to this specific subset of customers is up to 50% of project installation costs, capped at $250,000 per project. And the incentive cap includes an interconnection allowance up to $50,000. But in terms of scale, I do want to flag this won't cover a super large number of customers in 2024 and 2025. PSE has a budget of $500,000 each year for this extra pool of incentive funding. And then to help simplify installation and maintenance, customers will be referred to recommended energy professionals or reps who can act as trusted advisors throughout the process. So reps meet certain standards of excellence They're licensed, bonded, and insured, and they are certified by the North American Board of Certified Energy Practitioners. However, I will note that they are not required to use an installer from the REP list to be eligible for incentives. And then I said larger system. What is a larger system? To give you a visual, there's a photo of a 200 kilowatt system on a local school. So 100 kilowatts would be roughly half that, and 1,000 would be roughly 5 times the size of that.
Mackenzie,
Next.
before you move
Yeah.
forward, there are a couple of questions in the chat, probably related to the visual that you have. One in particular is whether or not this is for residential or commercial customers. And then
Yes,
there's some questions,
excuse
around those who will be actually performing as contractors. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, thank you. So yes, this is for primarily commercial customers because the project scale is so large. So it would not be meant for typical residential homes. And then I saw that I think Malcolm did respond to the question, but recommended energy professionals are contractors that meet that criteria, not PSE staff.
Okay, thank you for that.
Next slide. So I'll talk through how we've currently envisioned the intake, review, and prioritization process for these applications. And I want to be specific that when I say these applications, it's for that extra incentive pool for community-based service providers, not for the general 6.67 cents per kilowatt hour that's the broader set of customers are eligible for. So we are planning to take applications on a rolling basis and review what we've received at the beginning of each month. There's a few reasons we've headed in this direction as opposed to having a set application period. There's generally less projects of this size being built. And B, they take longer to construct. So if we are trying to get benefits out to the community in a timely manner, the rolling basis will help facilitate that. And then similar to the Green Power Solar grants, we plan to rank applications based on community impact and opportunities for community education and awareness, with community impact at the absolute forefront. And I'll dive a little deeper into what community impact can mean in the next slide. Then high priority applications will be approved until our annual budget is committed. If there is budget remaining, medium and low priority applications are waitlisted and reviewed again the following month against any new applicants. Next slide. This slide expands a little bit on how we'll frame the questions that help us gather information on community impact and education and awareness. If you see me present on our Green Power Solar Grant Project Prioritization Framework or participate in that process yourself, this will look familiar. And I do want to acknowledge that we have our annual Green Power Solar Grant process improvement review tomorrow evening with Jenny C and TJ. And we do want to align these scoring methodologies as much as possible. So if we talk through any new ways to better prioritize Green Power Solar grant projects in that meeting, we may also weave that into this program's prioritization model. But the current plan is that community impact is weighted most heavily at 85%. And we're really looking to hear how these applicants plan to use their utility bill savings to further serve and benefit their communities. So are they planning to serve more customers, hire more staff, expand program offerings? There's questions about their commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion, like is their board and management representative of the communities they serve? What roadmap do they have for expanding their DEI programs? And then with a lesser weighting at 15%, what methods would they use to share clean energy information and education with their communities as a result of installing this system? And then finally, extra credit for projects that provide workforce development for historically marginalized community members during installation of the system. So something like shadowing or apprenticeship programs. And then next, I can move on to residential batteries unless there's any, I know we are going into breakout rooms at the end, but are there any questions you want me to answer before I move on to residential batteries?
There are a couple of questions in the chat that I think there are a couple of questions in the chat. It looks like Malcolm is working to answer them in the chat. One relates to the program and how it's funded, if it's baked into rates. And I think there was another question okay, so the one question is on the budget for the program and whether or not it's baked into rates. And then Amy, you had a question that I don't see on my screen anymore.
Yeah, no problem, Rose. My question was, how will the community impact questions be measured over time, if at all?
That is a great question. Can you give me an example of what you mean by that?
Yeah, so in the scoring, it mentions a demonstrated commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I imagine that there would be like a goals statement of some sort, like we commit to doing X, Y, Z over the course of this program. Will there be like follow-up about those goals? Like what is like the through line from the initial scoring and prioritization through the course of the program?
So what's the accountability, maybe, if you've made a statement that you will do X, Y, and Z, that you've actually done it? You know what? Thank you for that question, because what I will say is, you know, we base this heavily off the Green Power Solar grants, and we typically, to reduce the operational burden on those organizations, we haven't made them report to us on any changes they've made, but I think it's an interesting point and maybe a gap that exists in our current process where we don't, we trust, but maybe don't verify. So it's, I think, a really interesting point to take back and say, how can we weave more accountability into this process?
Thank you, Mackenzie. I know we want to move on to the batteries. Amy, for that question, let's just say that there will be some additional follow-up with respect to the process, but this is absolutely a question that we would like to explore, because you're applying your equity lens. That's what we're asking the EAG to do. And Mackenzie, I think, has been responsive. So we're going to move on because we want to get to the breakout rooms. Thank you.
Okay, I think if we're moving on to residential batteries, then we'll skip one more slide forward. Okay, so what we've heard from our customers and other market research on the topic of batteries, customers felt that the resiliency provided by batteries can give them peace of mind when outages occur. Especially customers for whom losing an entire fridge full of food is a major financial setback, or for those whose medication needs to be refrigerated, or who have supplies for their livestock that need to be refrigerated. There was also great excitement in the opportunity to learn more about batteries. Something we heard is that it still feels slightly intangible and potentially out of reach. But similar to solar, there's some concerns paired with all that excitement. So primarily around the cost of the battery, the time needed to demystify and tackle the installation process. If you're a renter, how to get your landlord on board. And the fact that while batteries can be beneficial on their own, because of resiliency, energy burden reduction won't occur unless paired with solar or time of use rates. Next slide. So we also plan to launch this program to residential customers in the first half of 2024. We've worked to reduce that cost barrier they identified by providing a number of purchase and installation incentives for customers who are identified as vulnerable populations or customers experiencing reliability issues with their electric service. We've defined vulnerable populations similar to the CEIP as customers that experience a disproportionate cumulative risk from environmental burdens due to adverse socioeconomic factors, including but not limited to seniors on fixed income, customers receiving in-home care, customers with disabilities, and customers with a high energy burden. So the incentive for that group is up to 100% or $10,000 to offset the cost of installing a battery at their home. Our target spend is 40% of available PSE incentives in 2024 and 2025. That comes out to about 8 customers per year. And then the second incentive is for reliability-focused customers. Those are customers located in an area of greatest concern, which is defined as the top 50 distribution circuits over the past 5 years that consistently contributed to the longest outage duration multiplied by the number of customers affected. Our target spend for that group is 60% of available PSE incentives in 2024 and 2025. That comes out to about 24 customers per year. And for some additional context on the cost of a typical home battery, I have that it'll cost between $10,000 and $20,000 fully installed, but I want to caution that that number can vary widely based on several factors like the size of the battery, and could go even higher if a customer wanted to pair solar and a battery. While this program does not cover the cost of solar, we are monitoring other funds coming from state and federal sources that compare residential solar and batteries for eligible customers, and we would plan to share that with customers as they are available. And the last program component is additional financial incentives that are available to these customers who enroll a qualifying battery and allow PSE to access their battery during peak energy times. That compensation will be in the form of a gift card, which we heard through the community engagement was preferred to on-bill credits. Next slide. And how will customers hear about and move through the program? Our current plan is that while, of course, customers can apply for the program in a one-off scenario, given all the potential barriers around time and resources identified by customers, what will likely be the most effective for at least the first year or two of this program, or at least we think will be the most effective, is to partner with affordable housing providers who work with single-family homes to install batteries for qualified customers. So an organization like a Habitat for Humanity. And we've developed a handful of ways to confirm if customers are eligible for these incentives. For the vulnerable populations incentives, we would use income self-attestation or current enrollment in our bill discount rate program as a qualifier. We would automatically qualify anyone identified as deepest need customer through mapping. We could qualify a customer based on a medical device flag that we have in our system. The thinking there is that if a customer has a medical device, they would be especially vulnerable to outages. And because we know those last three aren't comprehensive, we've also created a process for community-based service providers to refer customers to by attesting that they are eligible. So we wouldn't ask for any more details about the customer's personal situation. We would just rely on the word of the CBO that referred them. For reliability focused customers, the qualification is a bit more straightforward because areas of greatest concern are mapped. So customer addresses would just be cross-checked against that mapping. Once a customer is identified as eligible for these incentives, they're referred to and must use a contractor in PSE's list of recommended energy professionals. This is a little bit different than solar buyback, where commercial customers weren't required to use a recommended energy professional. Here we have a much greater concern about predatory behavior towards residential customers in these communities. So we want to ensure the best and the safest customer experience for them. Once a recommended energy professional assesses the project, they'll submit a funding reservation form to PSE. And if PSE accepts the project, the contractor will provide a bid with the instant rebate to the customer. So the customers don't need to go into their own pockets to front the amount of the PSE incentive. If there's any amount left above the incentive PSE is providing, the customer will settle that bill with the recommended energy professional, not PSE. Next slide. And then before we move into breakout rooms to discuss, there are just a few other key customer journey questions that I want to touch on. Again, all of this is just our current approach. We are open to change, especially after we get a sense of customer interest, demand, or pain points in the first year as well. So rebates will be awarded on a first come, first served basis. There's a few reasons we plan to start with this approach. One, we don't necessarily at this time expect high customer demand for this product, at least initially. So if we get a qualified customer, we really want to get them the benefits of that battery as soon as possible. And second, while of course there was a mix of opinions, residential customers we connected with from named communities in our community engagement were more likely than commercial customers to identify first come, first served as their preferred application approval process. We heard from them, if I use my limited time and resources to apply and I'm eligible and you have the funding, I don't understand why I wouldn't be funded. So we took that into account here. How long will funds be reserved for? Up to 1 year from when PSE confirms that we are reserving the funds with the contractor. So folks have 1 year to install the batteries before we need to look into releasing the funds for another customer. What happens once all annual funding is reserved? Customers will be placed on a wait list to be reviewed in the order that they were received. So in the off chance additional funds become available, someone drops out, we'll have a wait list going. What about geographic diversity? So in the initial rollout stage, although we'll certainly track geographic diversity, we're not planning on withholding funds based on what county a customer is in and if other customers from that county have applied. We're currently planning to use this approach for the same reasons I mentioned in the first come, first serve section. We're not sure we'll have a lot of initial demand for this project, so we don't want to hold back for qualified customers who apply again, but we are open to changing this approach if we see more demand than we thought. And finally, what if a customer qualifies for both incentives? They would receive the higher rebate of the two. So if they are a customer qualified for the vulnerable populations incentive, and they're on an area of greatest concern, they qualify for the $10,000 vulnerable population incentive. And that
So
finishes
Mackenzie,
yeah.
we have a ton of questions in the chat that I think we can answer, but for the sake of time, I think we do need to move to the breakout sessions. EAG members, there are some specific questions that we'll ask you to answer when you get into your breakout sessions. This is a self-selecting process. Will, may I ask you to put up the slide with the instructions, and feel free to come off mute if it is necessary to explain. The process is that you'll go into the breakout room. It'll be facilitated. Mackenzie and Heather will be in the breakout rooms to help with any technical questions. Will and I will be there to facilitate. And we're going to ask one member to self-identify to report out so that we can have some cross conversation at the end. But we only have about 25 minutes. So if we could move forward. Will, do you want to provide any additional?
Yeah, I'll just add, Rose, that for the sake of time, folks will just be in one room as opposed to jumping to either room, but we'll have a broader group discussion so everyone will get to see the discussion that occurred in each room.
Okay, sounds good. So next steps are for Kim to launch the breakout rooms. You have about 12 minutes as opposed to 15, but I think 12 minutes would be good for discussion. How's that? Okay, so you should see something that allows you to select. No? So we'll clarify, are we not going into two rooms, or we're just going to go through the solar conversation and then the battery conversation as a single group?
I think what Will meant, Rose, is we weren't interchanging, so stay in the room that you choose.
Okay. So you will select. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Kim.
Yeah, I don't see the select button.
I don't either.
Yeah, I don't see anything coming up yet.
Same here. If you see your name, if you kind of just scroll down the page, the rooms are at the bottom of all the names.
Ray, we're not seeing anything on our screen. Okay, now you should have something. It says join breakout room. I have one.
I can also move people into rooms if you want to share where you want to be placed.
Selection by default.
I'm open.
I'm open too. This is Carria.
Megan, can you hear me? Oh, there we go.
Me?
Hi, Megan. Everyone else went to breakout rooms and it looked like you were just coming back into the meeting.
Yeah, my internet is being terrible.
Oh no, okay.
Let me try to join again through my computer. I joined through my phone because my computer internet is saying it's not there anymore. Okay, now it's letting me. If someone can let me back in. There we go.
Yep.
Okay, hang on.
Okay, we're back. That was definitely rapid fire. But I believe that we got some good information out. And I've taken a couple of notes. Malcolm was taking notes in my session. So, Will, how would you like to proceed? We basically had two questions for you. One was for you to share, I mean, again, applying the equity lens, share any concerns or thoughts that observations you had that you wanted to share around the program. And then secondly, any suggestions that you might have relative to how to market it. And we had a good conversation in the battery breakout, but how would you like to proceed, Will? You tell me and we'll go.
Perfect. And apologies, all the lights have gone out in my office. So I can go ahead and share my screen, and then I know that Amy is going to give us an update on our conversation. And Amy, feel free to reference the notes, and I think the group can support you as well.
Yeah, and I want to echo what Monica said. Like, we were just scratching the surface of the second question. Dennis was bringing up right at the end that in terms of marketing the program, like, how can we make it easy for people to get to the application, get to, like, how can we market it to let people know it's going to be easy for them to do and to start the process? Because that, like, being afraid of how difficult it's going to be is a barrier. Another suggestion from Rachel was to market to like landlords or people who own buildings and businesses, see if we can get them on board and to the rest of their connections. But what we mostly focused on was like concerns, suggestions for improvement. And one, I think this speaks to making it easy, is like having something interactive that people can do to kind of see if they may qualify, they might be a good candidate, that can start doing some calculations for them to see how they personally could benefit from being part of this program in an easy, usable way. There was questions about how to impact, like make sure that highly impacted communities are targeted. I think this goes back to this marketing piece. There's, we wanted to clarify that this solar products are for community-based organizations. So really making sure that's clear as a part of the marketing might be helpful as well. How can Puget Sound Energy kind of take on some of the burden of the application, right? We don't want the application, maybe thinking about how making an easy application, and then it's Puget Sound Energy's job to do the filtering and to make the more difficult decisions and things like that, like put that on PSE and not on the initial applicants. There is kind of ongoing questions about, like, if you have a lot of narrative-based questions, who may self-select out of doing those applications? And, you know, providing technical assistance through the reps, as we talked about earlier, but grant writing assistance, that needing to ask for help and then needing to ask for help multiple times was kind of a concern we are having about, like, what is the capacity for the organizations that we'd like this program to target, and having that be a kind of an equity concern as well. And so really questions about scoring, questions about how to make it accessible, like really the 3 A's, and then talking maybe about accountability. Maybe does that need to be a huge part of the first screening, or is that an ongoing part of the program? And then I think those are the main points, but please, friends, jump in. There's been some comments that I haven't been able to read.
Thank you, Amy. And there are also some comments coming in the chat. The chat is very rich this meeting. And I know that you feel a little crunched. I'm going to appreciate Monica and ask for her to share the feedback from the batteries conversation.
Yeah, I feel like we just scratched the surface on both of these questions. I think there were a couple of concerns regarding the overall number impacted, outreach, how, the burden on both CBOs and applicants, and how that might work out. In terms of outreach, we focus a little bit on kind of rural communities and thinking about that. Mailers, the combining with other programs that are already kind of working or reaching out to these communities. I think the other thing that we talked about was also thinking about load shifting. And one thing that I wasn't aware of was that the battery is both used for, kind of grid efficiency as well as the household. So just kind of understanding that a little bit better. Also, how big a campaign can you do when you have 8 people or households a year impacted? So yeah, I think there were a couple people that didn't even get to mention their concerns and suggestions. So yeah, I would love to see more of that conversation, or maybe even maybe a survey to go out to us. Because I think there were a lot of people that didn't even get a chance to speak or speak more about it, and would maybe like to opine and put in more information.
Thank you. That was very helpful. So here is the opportunity, the dilemma and the opportunity. We would really like to keep this conversation going, because this engagement is exactly what I think we need. And these are 2 key opportunities. We want to help customers take advantage of these programs. So EAG, how do you feel about taking a break, but rather than going into our look back on 2023, continuing this conversation, and we could defer the look back to our meeting next month? I see TJ smiling. I mean, I just sometimes, it's good to keep the momentum going. Let me ask, is anyone opposed to doing that? No, I see thumbs up from Emily. We still have conversation in the chat. All right, then I think we have a plan. It is now 6:29, about to be 6:30. If we could come back at 6:35, we could continue this conversation. Okay, let's welcome back everyone so we can continue this important dialogue. Again, for anyone looking to participate in the public comment period, we've scheduled that for 7 p.m. I still think we'll be able to meet that. Please don't join the meeting until then. And when you do, here are the options that are available to you. By Zoom or by calling in, and the meeting IDs are on your screen right now. And we'll bring them up again if you haven't had a chance to take them down. Okay. We are going to ask Will to share his screen. And we're going to continue this conversation and maybe do some live note taking. I want to make sure that we caught the input, at least in batteries, Will, because Malcolm was both answering questions and taking notes. And so he did capture the last comment around inclusive messaging and inclusive languaging. Excuse me, inclusive language for the marketing effort. So if we could please, maybe we'll start with solar, or maybe another question is, are there common areas or common concerns about the program that we should be aware of? There may be some overlap. Or do you think that the programs are distinctive enough that we should continue the conversation and separate them? I don't see any hands up. All right, well then let's go back to the conversation with the solar group. Would anybody from that group like to further amplify Amy's overview and summary? Anything that we need to capture here? The first question is around concerns or suggestions for improvement of the program as Mackenzie described them. And then the second part of it is your thoughts, again, applying your equity lens to how best to market the program. Will?
I'm seeing hand raises from Jenny and Karia.
Okay. Karia, we haven't heard from you, so could we start with you and then Jenny will move over to you.
Sure. So I think after hearing,
Give the EAG an opportunity for any last minute questions, observations, comments. This has been a very helpful and robust conversation. And I think we all appreciate the fact that we were able to devote some additional time to this conversation. We have lots of notes and quite a lot of comments in the chat. So thank you for your feedback here. I'd like to give Ray just thank you, a moment to tee up the deferral of our look back for 2023 to give you sort of a preview so you'll know what to expect next month. Then for anyone who'd like to participate in public comment, we'll go to you after we review that and our next steps. So we are within range. We're within range. So anything that you'd like to say, Ray, regarding the year in review and knowing that we'll do a deeper dive next month?
For sure. Thank you, Rose. You all are welcome. And I would encourage you to take a look at the slides. There are 7 or 8 of them. What we attempted to do was revisit the topics from 2023, articulate what did we bring to you and talk to you about, what were the questions, and then what is the feedback that we heard from you and what did we do with it? It's a high level cut, as you can imagine, for topics that span a year and 10 meetings or so. But we'll repurpose those slides for a future meeting and plan to come back and talk to you about that in the near future. So thank you for your flexibility and letting us know tonight where you wanted to spend your time. It was a really cool opportunity to adjust on the fly and focus on the topic that you all were really diving deep into. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Ray. We'll look forward to having that discussion next month. Let me just say, as far as next steps quickly, your steering committee will be meeting on February 5th at 6 p.m. And then the next meeting for the full EAG is scheduled for February 20th. So that's when we will tee up that conversation. And we will certainly make sure that if there are any follow-ups, and we're going to scrub the chat, if you will, or at least make sure that we pull out all of the key comments that you have offered, and with great appreciation for your very active participation tonight. Let us move forward to those who may have an interest in public comment. Thank you for your patience tonight.